Hello and welcome. I am so glad you are here. If you are new to the show, thank you for joining me. And if you're a repeat listener, I really appreciate your loyalty. Please share out this podcast with aspiring business leaders and entrepreneurs that you know so we can help them in their career journey. Well, today I am so excited to delve into the career journey of Jennifer Willis Nicely. She is the Vice President of Philanthropy for the South Region of CommonSpirit Health. She is going to share the secrets to her success and intimate details about her life, loves, and rise to the top. This is the Empowered Career Woman podcast, broadcast from the Whitfield Media Group studios in Chattanooga, Tennessee. The Empowered Career Woman is proudly presented by Medicare Misty. Medicare Misty is a real person who can help answer your Medicare questions. Get real help from her team at MedicareMisty.com. I'm your host, Lisa McCluskey, and now let's podcast. Well, folks, to level set and get you ready for this phenomenal conversation with Jennifer, I just wanted to let you know that CommonSpirit Health is the nation's largest not-for-profit healthcare system, providing care in over 2,200 care sites in 24 states. Jennifer is responsible for philanthropy initiatives in CommonSpirit's Arkansas, Kentucky, Georgia, Ohio, Tennessee, and Texas markets. She also serves as the foundation president for CHI Memorial in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I've had the pleasure of knowing her since 2008 and have watched her as she has risen in the organization and grown the philanthropy efforts across the region. I am so pleased to share her journey. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I'm thrilled to be with you here today.
I'm so glad that you could take time to be here. I feel very honored because I know that you are just a very busy lady nowadays.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I'm honored to be here.
Great. So we're going to delve into your career, and I always find it fascinating to learn about where people start and where they end up. So let's talk from the very beginning. Where did you start? Where did you go to school? And what was your major?
So I'm originally from Southwest Georgia, deep South, Albany, Georgia, and I went to Vanderbilt University, went to a tiny, tiny high school, 36 people in my graduating class, and 5 of us went to Vanderbilt, which was is just a crazy thing. I really thought I was going to the north to move to Nashville, Tennessee. But majored in English and business minor. And oddly enough, I started in engineering and made a just complete switch after my freshman year. So all over the board. I loved math. I loved English. And I really, when I started school, I thought I wanted to be an architect or a civil engineer. And after that first year, I decided maybe that wasn't for me, and made the switch to the School of Arts and Sciences, and ended up in English and business.
Okay, so you loved the idea of English and business. Were you leaning more toward you were going to go maybe journalism, or what were you thinking at the time?
So I really thought I wanted to do healthcare marketing.
Okay.
My first internship, my freshman year, after my summer after my freshman year, was with a hospital marketing department.
Oh,
Lisa, right up your alley.
Right up my alley.
Yeah. So back in my hometown, worked for the local hospital there, and they were pretty short-staffed at the time. You probably, that's very familiar. And they let me do so much as a 19-year-old kid, probably far more than I possibly was had the skills and ability to do. But I got to do everything from visiting patients' rooms and interviewing patients to helping write articles for some of their newsletters to help them put on marketing events. And it really marketing was the piece that really drew me in, but the healthcare part really sparked an interest that I didn't know a few years later would come back around
Would
for me.
define your career.
Yes.
Yeah, I have to say, I think coming into marketing like that, you get such a well-rounded knowledge of the entire organization, and you learn about the patient's journey, and you learn about the physician's journey and what it's like for them. And I think that it's a crash course almost in getting your doctorate in patient care.
It really was. So they were a hospital that delivered a lot of babies,
Oh.
and so I got to meet a lot of the new moms as they were having their first babies. I got to they had me do things like deliver a little gift to all the new moms.
Oh.
But then, like you said, I also got to interview physicians for
Yes.
stories for the magazine. So a true crash course into the broad spectrum of healthcare.
That's great. That's great. So how long were you with the hospital?
So it was just a summer internship, just
That's
that very,
it.
very
Yeah.
first summer after my freshman year of college.
And then where did you go?
So back to school and finished up, and I graduated early and went to work for a bank in Atlanta, Wachovia Bank at the time, and I entered into their management training program.
Okay.
So that 1 year training program where I got to experience a whole lot of things, and I ended up in their marketing area for business banking. So spent a couple of years there while my then soon-to-be husband, fiance, was still finishing up graduate school, and had just a great experience getting to travel all over and work with a whole lot of different people and businesses. It was just an excellent first job out of school to have that just well-rounded experience in banking.
Mm-hmm. So how long did you stay in the banking?
So I was there for, I guess, about, 2.5 years.
Okay. And from there, where did you head?
So got married, and my
Okay.
husband was from Chattanooga, and so he had a job back here at Miller and Martin in Chattanooga, and so we moved here. All of his family was in Chattanooga, and came here having no job. I had to leave, and started looking, putting out resumes, and really literally just fell into my job at Memorial. We knew somebody who was there. They had a one-person development shop at the time, and they were putting on a big event. And she asked me, she knew I was new in town, knew nobody. And she asked me if I would help stuff invitations.
Oh.
Because I was sitting at home doing nothing. I was probably writing thank you notes still from my wedding gifts. And so I helped stuff invitations for a few days. And when that was over, she said, well, you still don't have a job. Would you help me do some more things for this event? Would you help me get sponsorship? So I said, sure. I've never done anything like that before, but I'm sure I can do that. So started. She was a wonderful mentor, and sort of taught me, here's how you do it. Here's how you make a call to somebody. And so I helped her get sponsorships for this event for the hospital. And by the time the event was over, she said, you know what, the hospital's really considered letting me hire a second person for the development office. Would you consider taking the job? I said, oh my goodness, of course. Never thought about this, but absolutely, this is a perfect fit. I love this. So came into it really just so naive, so over my head, out of my element, but just such a great mentor. She taught me so much. Betsy Chapin Taylor was her name, and she has gone on. She is known nationally for her work in healthcare philanthropy, and I'm fortunate that she was really my first mentor who got me into this career.
Well, I want to circle back to Maury in just a minute, but your time that you spent as an intern at the hospital, did that help play into how you're able to navigate your role in development.
Well, I think it at least had set some tone to having spent a little bit of time in a hospital, in that administrative side of a hospital. I at least had a tiny bit of an idea. But, looking back, my goodness, I think I was 23 years old. I just shake my head at how naive I was.
Well, it's probably a good thing when we're young like that, we don't know any better, right?
Absolutely.
And if you have a boss who's willing to let you do what you want to do,
well,
go for it.
Somebody who'll take a chance on you. My goodness,
exactly.
that is that is so what it takes so often, and I think that's the hardest thing so often, is to get that foot in the door. And I happened to have somebody who knew me enough to give me that shot as the volunteer, saw me that I was willing to try things, do things, put the work in, and I guess she saw something in me. I was very fortunate. She saw that maybe I had some spark that maybe I didn't see in myself.
Right. And, it underscores the importance of, sometimes it doesn't matter where you start. You have to start even as a volunteer to get your foot in the door.
Absolutely.
It doesn't have to be only start if I am paid this much salary and have this big of a title, but just start.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, before we go on, we need to talk about your husband. So did you meet in college?
We did. I was still in college. He had graduated and had stayed around Nashville for a year trying to decide what he was going to do with his life. So,
Okay.
and we met on a blind date, Lisa.
Is that right?
We did. Yes. Yep.
He is quite a character. I know he is a state attorney, but then he's got this other side that he is an author, right?
He is. So, yes, my husband is an attorney here in town with a firm called Evans Harris and Hackett. He's an labor and employment attorney. But Maury has a big personality,
Yes.
and is well known in town. He loves history and has written a number of books, and so a lot of folks know him. He is often asked to lead tours and speak, and so he's a lot of fun. He's a great spouse.
And how long have you been married?
We have been married 28 years this summer.
Okay. And you have two boys.
We do, 2 children who are grown out of the house.
Yeah, you're empty nesters.
We are, and thoroughly enjoying it.
Yes, I'll bet. Yeah, well, Maury is quite the character, and I would imagine that he keeps your marriage pretty lively with his sense of humor.
He keeps me laughing a lot.
That's a key ingredient to a long marriage
It
is laughter.
It is.
Yeah.
We have a good time.
Yeah, well, let's go back then to your career. I had to stop because we can't, miss out on talking about Maury. But when you started with the development office, it was just two people?
Right. So it was just a department of the hospital. We had not formed the foundation yet. So it was one person. I was the second person they hired. And so we were raising money for the hospital, and we're pretty small. And so I have stayed at Memorial for a long time, which is an unusual thing for people to stay in a nonprofit position like that, a fundraising position, for that long.
So how many employees are in the office now?
So we are now a foundation. In 2000, we officially made that switch from a development office to become a separate 501c3 foundation, a separate organization, solely there to support the hospital, though. We have a separate governing board of directors, but we can only raise money to support the mission of CHI Memorial. So we now have, 6 employees.
Okay.
Well, 7 people, 6 full-time.
Okay.
2 of us are part-time. So
yes, because part of your time is attributed to the other organizations.
It is.
Yeah,
I am really
sense.
only part-time at Memorial, yes.
Okay. I know there was a time when you left Memorial and then came back. Can you talk about that, having to step back?
I did. In 2006, a gentleman named Dan Bowers, who a lot of folks in Chattanooga probably know Dan. Great person. He had led the United Way for many years. He led Arts Build now. He led the Memorial Foundation, and I worked for Dan. Just another great mentor. I've had the opportunity to work with so many good mentors over the years. But Dan was the president of the foundation, and I was his director of development, and I knew one day I wanted his job, and I felt like I needed to leave to be able to come back and take his job. As I said earlier, I had come into that role when I was so young. I was in my early 20s, and so many people there at the hospital, I think, saw me still as such a young person, even though it had been almost 10 years at that point that I had worked there. I felt like I really needed to go away, get some other experience, to be able to be seen as someone who could take on that role as somebody who could lead the foundation. So I went to Siskin Children's Institute and was their director of development, led development for that wonderful organization. It was such a great experience. Met just amazing people, and just to do something different, to step out of that comfort zone at the hospital that I had been in for those 10 years. And not too long after I left, Dan made the decision to leave the hospital foundation, and so I put my name in to come back. And it took a while for them to do some reorganization, thinking about exactly what they wanted as they move forward. And it was almost a year from the time that I first reached out to the company that was doing the search to replace the hospital foundation president, to the time that I got the offer, and I stuck with it. I'll be honest with you, Lisa, when I first reached out to the gentleman who was not from Chattanooga, who was leading the search, he came back to me and said, "You're not what we're looking for."
Oh.
Yeah, he did. He said, you're too young. He said, "I don't think we want a female, and you just don't have enough experience."
So how did you overcome that?
Well,
That had to be crushing. That had to be soul crushing.
It was. This was the job that I had wanted for so long. I had made another career change just to be able to come back to that role. So I didn't give up. I didn't take my name out. He probably took my name out, but I think they probably moved forward with other candidates. Maybe it didn't work out with other candidates, and eventually they came back and asked me to interview. I interviewed a number of times, and I ended up being asked to take the role. So
that's great. Do you think that maybe because you had such a strong network of support from your work in the community at large, that people who were on the interview panels were aware of who you were and the work that you had done?
Probably so.
Yeah.
I had some big supporters who
Right.
I had worked with for a lot of years, a number of hospital board members, foundation board members who knew me and knew my work ethic, and I was fortunate enough that they believed in me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that goes back to you're so good at developing strong networks, and times like those are when they come to your aid and are willing to stand up for you. So that's important. I want to underscore what you said about you knew you had to step out so you would no longer be seen as that young girl and gain that experience and come back. Andrew McGill, who I worked for, his famous line was always, "You're never a prophet in your own land." And sometimes that's true. You do have to step back, step out, and get experience elsewhere so they look at you with fresh eyes.
I totally believe that. It's so often we joke that it's the consultant from out of town with the briefcase
Right.
that is saying the exact same things that you've been saying, but for some reason they're listened to in different ways. Isn't that funny?
That's very true. I know there are many times I would meet with a consultant and pretty much tell them what they should say so that you knew you could get done what you needed to get done. It's like, go say this.
Yep. Yep.
As long as it doesn't
exactly.
come from me, it'll work.
Exactly.
Well, let's talk about how you've grown the philanthropy component significantly. What are some of your most important initiatives in your view that you spearheaded?
So when I was hired to come back in 2008, the plan was Memorial was in a huge growth mode. We were planning to build what is now the Gary Heart and Vascular Center we were taking on. It's the time that you had come to Memorial as well, Lisa. I came back at the same time you were joining. We did so much of this together. So huge projects were on the horizon. This $312 million expansion of Memorial was massive. And right at the time that we were getting ready to launch the feasibility for what a capital campaign for that would look like was when the markets crashed. So we took a step back and held on the capital campaign for that. It took about a year, really, before we felt like the community, the economy was ready to talk about a major fundraising effort, which for us was $15 million. It was so much more than Memorial had ever raised. I mean, gosh, we were at the time raising no more than maybe, I'm trying to think, maybe $1.5 million, $2 million a year at the very most. And we were suddenly talking about this $15 million capital campaign. It was absolutely massive, and it was really overwhelming to a lot of folks. But we had people in the community behind us and on the committee and leading the effort. Dr. Bill Stacy and Zan Gary were our chairman of the campaign, and those two guys are just a dynamic duo. People don't say no to them. So they were our campaign chairs. They were completely on board. Scotty Probasco was our honorary campaign chairman, and just the group of people gathered around the table, we just felt like there was no way we could not be successful in this. We also put together a really unusual for the time structure. We partnered a physician and a community leader at every point along the way. That's pretty common now in healthcare philanthropy, but at the time it wasn't being done, and it worked incredibly well. Our physicians were shocked at this idea that, oh my gosh, community people want to give and support our work here. And the community folks, I think, had this idea that, well, doctors don't give. Doctors aren't going to be involved here. They were shocked at the idea that our physicians were not only giving their personal money, but they were there in every meeting, in every visit, leading tours, talking with potential donors about the impact that their gifts were going to make. So that campaign was so successful. We had planned to try to raise $15 million in 3 years. We raised $17 million in about 18 months.
That's remarkable.
It was really head spinning.
And I think that campaign really set the bar on many levels. I recall at first people were just so shocked about the concept of raising that much money. And then you did it. And after that, it seemed to just raise the bar of, well, we can do that and we can do a little bit more. And the physician involvement at first, as you mentioned, seemed like such an odd concept or was a little bit shocking. And now it's just normal almost. It's the physicians expect to be involved. They want to be involved. They want to have a voice. And so it's like you turned the idea of philanthropy in the medical setting on its head. You flipped the narrative and created a whole new pathway.
Well, it was needed. I mean, healthcare in this community is so important. In every community is so important for people to be able to stay in their local community and get excellent healthcare is critical. And when a new company is moving to town, when anybody is coming and looking at a new community, they're looking at the schools, they're looking at what the hospitals look like. Those are some of the very top things. So being able to have a great hospital, and the fact is hospitals need our communities to support them. So, and Chattanooga has really stepped up and done that. So we're very, very fortunate in this community.
We are. I don't think a lot of people know that there isn't anything you can't have here in the Chattanooga region. That the level of expertise has just continues to excel. I think the only thing you cannot have at CHI Memorial is maybe a transplant.
Yep.
But brain surgery, neurosurgery, you name it, that is the most advanced. And it is largely because of donors and the community support and the support of the physicians.
Yep, it really is. It's amazing. And I think people don't realize that Chattanooga is also a destination for other people to come from other places. They come here for their health care. And I think a lot of times we don't realize what we have here in our own hometown.
That's true. I was volunteering after I retired in the surgery area, and I routinely would talk with people who they drove 2 hours just to have surgery with a specific physician at CHI Memorial because of the quality of care and the reputation. Yep. So kudos to leading to that effort.
Absolutely. Thank you. Team. And you may have seen over the weekend, Lisa, there was an article in the paper about a new center opening in our cardiology department at the Chattanooga Heart Institute. But it's there because of a donor from Florida. This gentleman followed his doctor to Chattanooga and was diagnosed with what was at the time a fairly rare disease. And he gave a $2.5 million gift to the CHI Memorial Foundation to start this center. A number of other people from the local community have made contributions as well. But this gentleman gets on a plane and comes to Chattanooga for his health care.
Wow.
From Sarasota, Florida. And he says that his friends look at him and say, "Why are you going to Tennessee for your health care? Are you crazy?" He says, "You know what? I go all over the country to hospitals. I can do that. I have the ability to do that. This is the best hospital I've ever stepped foot in."
That's a remarkable testament.
It is unbelievable. He is great, and for him to give that level of gift to support something in our community for us to be able to have here is such a testament to the physician who's treated him, to him as a person, and to our community.
That's fantastic. Well, let's take a step back and talk about donors. From the time that you started in the world of philanthropy until today, what have you seen their expectations change? The way you talk to them and involve them has changed. What evolution have you seen in that world?
So I think that any donor interaction ultimately is about a relationship. At least that's how I approach donors, Lisa. I do not like for a relationship to be simply transactional with the donor. Sometimes they are, but ultimately someone is going to be involved because they trust the organization, and a lot of times that trust has to come through me as the person who they're working with to get that information about what the hospital needs and how they can be involved. I think because I have been at Memorial total, we talked about I did leave for those 2 short years, but in total I've been there for well over 25 years. So a lot of folks I have deep relationships with who have been involved with Memorial for so long, or who are just getting to be involved with Memorial. I'm fortunate that I have that long history, and I have that knowledge that I'm able to, I think, really share and know and have that commitment to be able to talk with people about what Memorial truly means to me, means to our patients, means to our physicians, and how people can make a difference there. So, I do think that different generations are giving differently. I think some of our younger generations want to have a more personal impact with their giving, and I think that's a great thing. That can only be a positive. We want donors to be able to really have that sense of what the difference is that they're making. We want them to be able to come in and maybe meet somebody who they're making an impact on. If they're helping give a scholarship to, a nurse who's going to be able to elevate her skills to be able to better care for patients, we want to be able to introduce that donor to that nurse who's receiving that scholarship. We want them to be able to hear that story of that patient who they've helped. So I think there are only positives on the horizon as donors maybe change a little bit of how they're tending to give. But end of the day, a donor relationship is about that relationship.
It's about personal.
Absolutely.
The personal touch, a personal relationship. So people are just people at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's wonderful. I wanted to ask, you work with a lot of different boards. You have your foundation board, you have the hospital boards. How do you, and everybody that's sitting on that board, they might have their own, what they think is their own priority for the hospital, or different opinions about what direction you should all be taking for certain initiatives. How do you work across the divide? Especially when you look at those boards, you've got physicians, you have business leaders, you might have an accountant, they have all different perspectives.
So I think that with every board member I've ever worked with, I think the key has been to make sure that they have all the information that they need, making sure that our board members aren't left out in the dark on anything, that we are communicating to the highest level. If there is something that is going to be coming out, that we are telling them before it is told to, before it hits the papers, is very important. So I think that's the communication is absolutely key. Helping board members figure out what their role is on a board. Not everyone is going to have the same strengths to bring to the board table. That physician, that business leader, they're not going to all have the same passions, the same skill sets. So I really like to spend individual time with board members and work with them to find out what do they like to do, what do they enjoy doing, what is their skill set, and how can they best contribute to a board, so that we all come together to ultimately best benefit the organization. And then in terms of trying to make sure that we don't get sideways with each other, is trying to keep everybody to the point where we don't ever get to that point, Lisa. So I think, again, that communication. So if we know that we're coming to some difficult decision, some difficult issue we're going to face, make sure we're talking about it all along the way. We're not just suddenly putting this really tough issue in the board's lap and then saying, okay, now go deal with it, not having any idea of what's going to come from everybody.
But not blindsiding them.
Never blindsiding them, but making sure that everybody is completely brought up all along the way.
I will say one of the things I noted is that you do an exceptional job of giving board members information that they can share with their constituents out. Especially if there is something that's being announced, you always made sure the board members had the appropriate talking points. If your friends are asking you questions about this issue or about this initiative, here's some things that can help you talk about it.
Yeah. Well, because of a great relationship with our marketing department,
right,
and helping us do that. But also, at every board meeting, we made sure that they had an education session, so that they had things that were really positive, so that if they ran into somebody, at the aisle in the Publix who said, I saw you're on the Memorial Foundation board. What's going on there? Or I was, here and I had to wait a long time in the emergency department. I wasn't happy about it. That board member knew how to answer those questions.
Right.
They knew who to get that person to get an issue resolved. We never want our board members to feel like they get blindsided.
Yeah, that's it. That's very important. It helps them, too, to get excited about their involvement.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great.
I woke up this morning, stressing about a plan. Don't know which one to pick, I might need a hand.
Hi, they call me Medicare Misty.
She'll help to make the process smooth as whiskey, don't worry.
We work with several different carriers to make sure your coverage is not limited by a single company. Visit MedicareMisty.com and book your appointment today.
Don't worry, guarantee you'll be happy.
Well, I want to talk about, before we shift to some general leadership questions and your philosophy on leading, let's talk about your role. You have a very large region, and then in addition to that, you are leading the Legacy Foundation of, is it Kentuckiana? Kentuckiana, and that's a $120 million grant-making entity.
It is. That sounds strange.
Yes.
So across CommonSpirit's South region that I do lead, so from Texas to Ohio, all of our hospital foundations have have staff who are in those local markets who are raising money, and those range from a tiny rural hospital in Steubenville, Ohio, to a massive foundation in Houston, Texas, that's part of the Baylor St. Luke's Medical Center, and everything in between. So I work with all of those foundations to help provide their strategy and oversight of their staff and their boards and their fundraising. But part of that is we also have a Legacy Giving Foundation in Louisville, Kentucky. So Kentuckiana comes from Kentucky and Indiana.
Okay.
I know that word is strange, but it sits right there on the Kentucky-Indiana border. So the Legacy Foundation was created when some hospital assets were sold in the Louisville area, and this $120 million foundation was left there to benefit the community. So it acts as sort of a community foundation. They grant to a 6-county region right around Louisville about $5 million in grants a year that are focused on particularly bettering the health and well-being of citizens of that area. So it's been really interesting to sit on this side that's giving away money,
right?
Whereas the majority of the rest of my life is spent raising money. And I can tell you, sometimes it's harder to give away money than it is to raise money.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how do you manage to juggle those competing projects when you probably want to give everybody the money?
It is hard. So first of all, I've loved getting to know so many people in Louisville and about a lot of the issues that they're facing. They're not so different than the Chattanooga area. Right. They're facing housing issues, affordable housing issues, and issues with their education system, and all of the same things that we're facing here, and so many communities are facing. So it's been just so rewarding to be able to be part of some of the organizations that are making a difference in that community. So, and being part of this group that gets to go through those applications and visit the organizations and assess their applications. So it's tough work, but we have a wonderful board of directors up there, and they make the hard decisions. We just went through our spring grant cycle and awarded $2.4 million, I believe, to 20 organizations, I think was the final number in this round of grants. So it is not easy work, but it's very rewarding work to see the impact that those organizations are ultimately going to make on that greater Louisville community and their citizens.
That's great. A whole new perspective
A whole new
as well.
perspective.
Yeah. So, okay, I want to shift to some leadership questions now, because one of the purposes of this podcast is to help young girls, young women who are coming up the ladder and looking at people that are role models and hearing some advice from them. Everybody is always asking about mentors. How do I find a mentor? Do you have any advice for people who are coming up and they're thinking, gosh, I think I need a mentor? How do you find a mentor?
Goodness, finding a mentor. Well, first of all, I will say having mentors is absolutely critical. I would not be where I am in my career, in my life, without a multitude of mentors. And I will say, I think that in a lot of ways, they found me
Right.
over time. But there have been times that I have sought them out as well. So I think in terms of when I have sought out and found a mentor, it has been through people who I have admired, who I have experienced in various ways. I've seen them. Some of my very earliest members were, I'm thinking of two people who were leaders of Memorial Hospital Board, not the foundation board at the time, but the hospital board, Jim Hill and Joan Frierson, both just amazing people, and both people who I really continue to look up to. But I just saw that they had so much that I could learn from. So, making a phone call to ask advice here and there was probably how I began some of that relationship, and it grew from there. And they are both people who I continue to stay in touch with, and don't see either of them as much as I would like to. Jim doesn't live here in town anymore, but I still do occasionally have lunch with Joan and still learn from her almost 30 years later. Every time I talk with her, she is just an amazing person. So yeah, I would say, keeping your eyes open for who is around you in these circles. Who do you aspire to have a career like? Who has characteristics or is in a place that you aspire to go eventually, and reach out to that person. Again, ask their advice. Ask if they'll have a cup of coffee with you. Whenever I get those phone calls, I always say yes.
Yeah.
Always. Because I've had so many of those people again in my life who made that difference. I'm always going to take the time to do that.
I think what I hear you say is have an open mind and an open heart, and ask people their opinions and ask for advice, and that triggers in them a desire to help.
Absolutely. And be brave.
Be brave, yes.
Be brave.
Yes. You don't have to be the smartest in the room. Be brave and be willing to be vulnerable and say, I need some guidance here. I need some assistance here.
Well, because I think that person is going to be flattered and honored that you see them as somebody who they have something to give and to share with you.
Yeah, I think that's important. So when you are in a room with very powerful leaders, how can a woman show up as powerful without alienating people?
Lisa, goodness, so often powerful women get such a bad rap. I think people are so quick to say women are too aggressive or call them a B word. That is such a shame. I think that still happens to this day. I am not an A type, an A personality type. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I don't think I come across that way. But again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you can tell me differently.
Oh, no,
you've been in a lot of places with me.
I have been in a lot of places and a lot of meetings, and I think you're the most collaborative leader that I have been around. You have a way of accepting other people's opinions, even if they have a difficult opinion, processing it and coming back with I don't want to say a neutral response, but a response that doesn't make them feel threatened, or,
So
does that make sense?
I think that's my personality, and that
Yeah.
is not everyone's personality. So I don't know how to answer that, of how women get over this idea of a strong woman is seen in a negative light and a strong man is seen in a positive light. Still to this day, I don't know how we continue to get over that. I don't have the magic answer. If I do, I'd be a bajillionaire.
Well, I think it's just continuing to talk about it,
Yeah.
continuing to talk about it and offer, leadership tips and
Absolutely.
and share experiences so women can ultimately craft their, I want to say, their own personality going into
Right.
the workplace.
Right. And I would never tell a woman to change her personality. If she has, that strong A-type personality, I would never say, well, don't come across that way. Change how you act, because that's not genuine, and that's not the
Right.
right thing to do.
Yeah.
We're better off changing everybody else's
Change
perspective.
everybody else. But it might be how you approach it.
Absolutely.
That needs to
That's true.
change slightly.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And yes, we can be strong and firm without being aggressive.
I think that is the perfect answer. You can be strong and firm without being aggressive.
So, and I think I do try to approach, I am used to being in a room of really strong personalities, powerful personalities, and my goal is always to get everyone on the same page. And I can remember even from the time that I was very early in my career. This is sort of funny, but I ran Memorial's golf committee, and I was all of 24 years old, probably, Lisa. But it was all men, and I didn't know what in the world I was doing. But again, some very strong, powerful people, and a golf tournament, that seems like such a not a big deal, but they all had really strong opinions about things.
I'm sure.
And going back to Jim Hill, who was the chairman of the Memorial Board at the time, was on the committee, and I can remember as we were getting towards the end of this work and the event was happening, he pulled me aside, and it meant the world to me. But he said, "You know what? You did a really good job navigating all of those guys throughout all of this. You made every one of them come out of that feeling like they won the battle."
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure how I did it, but I think that's just a skill that I have been able to develop, and maybe something innate. But that is always my goal, is making sure that everyone feels like they've been heard, and that we've come to a compromise, that everybody is walking out feeling like they got something, and we're all happy with where we're walking out of this room.
That's the secret sauce.
I guess so.
Yes. So speaking of that, then, what have you noticed in other female leaders, some traits maybe that end up derailing their career or derailing their efforts?
That aggression, I think, that we talked about earlier, is one. Unfortunately, I think that I still do see female leaders who can tend to not be good collaborators. They tend to still be a little backstabbing with their female colleagues. And I really find that very upsetting. And we all just have got to get past that for female leaders to continue to move forward and up and and get where we need to go in the leadership ladder. And I don't know if you still see that some in your career, Lisa. Do you?
Well, that is one thing that I think this younger generation coming up, they seem to be more supportive of each other. I've noticed that the millennial generation are more about supporting each other as women. I think I'm part of that boomer generation, and I believe we probably were the worst at that, climbing our way to the top.
Yep.
And I am. It's been very satisfying to see a shift in that. When I speak to somebody who's maybe in their early 30s or late 20s, they're more about women supporting women.
Yeah, I agree. And I think some of the younger women I work with do have a much better sense of how we all come together to raise the vote.
And I love that. And it makes me really happy to see. I've said frequently, I wish I lived my career backwards, because, I would love to be part of what's happening today with the younger leaders and how open they are.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So, I think one other trait I see is as women, and again, I think it's probably some of that older generation, my generation, is apologizing too much.
Oh, yes. That is a common theme from all of my guests. They make that notation that women need to stop apologizing.
Yep. Just make a decision and be strong behind it, and don't say you're sorry for what you believe and what you think and where you're going to take something.
That's right.
And I have a hard time with that too. So I need to take my own advice.
That's right. Own your decision. Explain how the decision was arrived at, but don't apologize for having made the decision. Mm-hmm. That's great advice. I want to ask you about imposter syndrome. As you've risen, and now that you're over this huge region, do you ever feel the imposter syndrome at all?
Every day.
Every day. Yeah. And so what are some of the ways you manage that?
Giving myself a pep talk is probably the best way. I think every day I have moments of feeling like I am so good at my job. I know the answers to this. I'm doing great. And 5 minutes later, I feel like I am terrible at this. I don't know what I'm doing. How am I going to handle this situation? What is my answer going to be? I don't, I just need to walk away. And I think we're lying to ourselves if we're not saying that we're all going through that. And it's terrifying. I mean, maybe that's what keeps me going, is feeling like I'm always challenged. I often don't have the answer.
Proving yourself wrong.
Right. But no, I think it really does seriously take me giving myself a pep talk that, okay, you were chosen for this role for a reason. Somebody believes in you. You know how to do this. You can do this. It may be hard, but you can get there. So take a breath, figure it out, and move forward, because I have to do a lot of really tough things every day.
Well, I think it underscores the importance of internal chatter and keeping control of the negative internal chatter and being mindful of spending time every day on positive internal chatter. Mm-hmm. And when I retired, they gave me a book of the highlights of my projects that I had overseen over the years of my career. And so much of it I had forgotten. And I thought, you know what? We should have a yearbook. Every year there should be a highlights book for leaders that you look back on everything that you accomplished.
Maybe I need to create one of those for myself.
You should. Every year you need a highlights reel.
It would come in very handy.
And then it gives you the energy to keep going and feel like, yeah, we did some great things. Yeah. Yeah. So keeping that internal chatter. I think for women it's worse. I don't know if men spend as much time in that as women do?
I ask my husband that question occasionally. Do you ever feel this? And I don't think he does.
No, he would just have a joke and everybody'd laugh and it would be fine.
Probably so. No, but he would. But yes, I don't think men go through that the way that women question themselves.
Yeah. So your challenge is you're going to create your highlight reel this year.
Thank you. I'm going to do that.
Because it's incredible. You forget so much that you do, and you tend to remember all the things that you didn't do right.
Absolutely, because there are lots of both. So I'll try to focus on the good.
That's right. Keep that positive. So you inspire so many people, and you've talked about Jim and Joan. Who else is inspiring you today?
I've always said from my entire life, my dad has been a mentor of mine. Mainly work ethic. My dad has the hardest work ethic I've ever seen of anybody in my entire life. He grew up extremely poor. They had the youngest of 10 children. His parents worked in a cotton mill and had no indoor plumbing, so very, very poor. And he went to work as a very young child at a gas station washing trucks. I think was his first job, and and we were from very young age taught that working and working hard was very important. It was very much who you needed to show the world who you are by how hard you work. Mm-hmm. So I feel like that is that has always been a big part of who I am, and that's come from my dad. Gosh, so many people that I look up to. Yes, I mentioned Joan and Jim and Betsy Chapin Taylor are still folks who I continue to look up to, who've been wonderful mentors over my life. I really look up to Janelle Riley, Memorial CEO, and the only female CEO in the area, in CommonSpirit South region, one of the only female hospital CEOs at her level. She is a really impressive person, and at the same time balances family and still treats people with kindness, and every time I see her asks about my family and is in there leading this massive organization. She's a really impressive person who I look up to. A woman named Nancy Busani, who I actually work for. Nancy is the head of all of CommonSpirit's philanthropy across the country. Similar kind of person who is just in there getting it done. But again, is balancing family and personal life, and also has this huge job that she seems to make it all work, and does it with grace and holds it all together. So I think those are the kinds of people who I think right now, with where I am in my life, I look to say, okay, I can do this too. I can see that person doing this. I can do it too.
All strong female leaders.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how do you balance your demanding job and your personal life?
Well, my husband may say right now I'm not doing such a good job of that. I'm traveling
He'll probably write
lot.
A book about you someday.
Gosh. I'm having to travel a whole lot with my current responsibilities, and that's tough. It's hard to be on the road. I know that a lot of people do that, and I don't know how people do in the long term, especially people with younger children and families at home. I do have a very supportive staff, and I have a lot of wonderful friends. And then the team here at Memorial, they are some of the best folks I've ever worked with, and I know that they are running things and stepping in and have these amazing relationships with our doctors and our donors and all the people here, that even if I'm not the person in the room and in the meeting, they are handling it so beautifully. I completely trust them.
You've built a wonderful network around you.
I'm very fortunate.
Yes.
In that. Yes.
So in the fundraising industry, as a young woman, if I would want to come into it, do you see opportunities here, especially in our region?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. I love the Chattanooga area philanthropy community. I've been involved from my very early career in an organization called the Association of Fundraising Professionals. We have a really strong chapter, and have so many wonderful colleagues that I have worked with and known through that group over the years. We're, even though you would think that we're out there sort of as competitors, we're all raising money amongst the same community. We're not competitors at all. These are folks who I would never, ever hesitate to pick up the phone and call somebody to ask their advice. And we share ideas. And, that group comes together monthly to have education sessions. And it has always been this concept amongst that group of by one of us doing well, we're all raising the boat for the Chattanooga community as a whole. So always opportunity for people to come into the philanthropy world in Chattanooga, and it is such a generous community. I think there's been a long time statistic that Chattanooga has more per capita giving than almost any city its size, and I would say that's still the case.
I had heard that before. Yeah. In addition to fundraising capacity, the number of churches per capita is one of the largest.
Yes, it is, and number of foundations who are making gifts, and so even though I think we are seeing some shift in giving, I think we are seeing in more recent years fewer people giving, but those people who are giving are making larger gifts. And that is changing the philanthropy landscape. I think as the economy changes over time, that's probably even more true right now. Cost of living is going up, and so people who have those extra resources that they feel they can give to a cause they believe in are probably fewer right now, but folks who are doing well, and the stock market has been doing very well. Some of those folks are making larger gifts.
So they want to make an impact, a bigger impact with their gift.
Yes, and I think we're seeing people instead of giving, $50 to 10 organizations, are giving $200 to 3 organizations. So people are tending to want to make a larger impact on a smaller group of organizations and causes that they really have a strong belief in.
Right. I think that's a great thing, because you're not going to be competing with other nonprofits. If people are giving causes to causes they believe in, there's only a select few. So you're not necessarily competing for that same donor who really wants to give to animals. Maybe they're not going to give to a hospital. So
that's probably true. And I talked about earlier the fact that we're seeing donors who really want to get more involved and want to see firsthand how their gifts are making a difference. And maybe if they want to give to animals, they're actually volunteering at the McCamey Animal Shelter, and so they're giving their time and their money. If they're wanting to be involved at, I'm not thinking of a great example, but, with the homeless in the community, they are actually at the food bank, or it's called Chat Foundation now, serving breakfast to our homeless community.
It's more purpose-driven.
It's definitely more purpose-driven. It's more hands-on. So it's more that direct line of seeing, here's the need, and here's how I personally can make a difference.
And that's good for everybody.
It is.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I'm going to shift gears and ask you some personal questions.
Okay.
All right. So what books are on your bedside table? And I know you're a reader.
I am an avid reader, Lisa, but I will tell you, I read strictly to mentally check out.
Oh, yes. I can see why. Absolutely.
I cannot stand to read a business book, a self-help book, and that's terrible. I know that is terrible.
No.
But goodness, I just finished a book last night, and I wish I could even think of the name of it. I love a murder mystery, which is the one I finished last night, about a little girl who'd been kidnapped, and thankfully she was found alive. But those are the kinds of things I read that I can just, I can skim, and it's an interesting story, and I can really just have that mental complete check out, and I don't have to really deeply think about anything. That's terrible, but that's the kind of reader I am. And I'm always reading something, and I always have an Audible going. I have a John Grisham Audible going right now.
There you go.
So I am not a deep reader. Sorry.
Oh, no, it's great. A lot of people who, at the end of the day, they have different methods of unwinding, and that's a great method.
Yep, that is mine.
Yep. So what impact do you want to leave? What do you want to leave as a legacy?
Oh, goodness. You said it earlier, thinking back on my career, I am so proud of the things that I've gotten to be involved in. I really do feel like that I've had the opportunities that have let me make a real impact on this community, and particularly through my work at Memorial. We talked about that big capital campaign back in the late 2000s. Through that campaign, we created the Gary Heart and Vascular Center,
yes,
and the Buzz Standiford Lung Center, and the Skiller and Cancer Institute. I mean, those are now these names of these places that so many patients come and get this amazing health care that changes their lives. And you know this, and I don't mind, I'm very open about my personal story, but I had the opportunity to be a part of the creation and building of the Marion Local Breast Center. And then many years later, 6 years ago for me, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Mm-hmm. And I got to be on the other side of the table and be the patient and experience so much of the equipment and the facilities, the places, the physicians, that I raised the money to be here and available for our community. So I really got to see how it makes a difference in people's lives when we have these, amazingly beautiful places like the Marion Local Breast Center that I got to go to receive my treatment, and had, these amazing surgeons and doctors and in places that they really made an impact on me and my family. So
has to be immensely gratifying.
I'm very, very proud of that, and I hope that I have a long career and will have a lot more places like that.
I'm sure you will. And as you were talking, I was thinking, in those places, that technology, that equipment, that advancement, it helped to attract the brightest physicians, not only in the country, but in the world. You talked about Buzz Standiford Lung Center. We have a physician who goes all over the world training people in his area of expertise, and he's at Memorial because of the efforts of your donors and your team in helping to create the Buzz Standiford Lung Center.
That's right.
So you're bringing the best of the best here to take care of people in the region.
Well, it's very, very gratifying to be part of that. But it's also so gratifying to get to be the person who connects the donor to that.
Absolutely.
Fred and Betty Skillern, who made the Skiller Cancer Institute possible in honor of their son, they just became such dear friends over time. But I will never forget when they made the decision to make that gift and honor their only son who passed away of cancer, memorialize him with that gift. We just sat and cried together. It meant so much to them to know that his name and his legacy was going to live on, and help other people. And I think that's what's so meaningful, when a donor gets to do that, and that I have the privilege of being able to make that happen.
And that's a lasting legacy for everybody.
Yep.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you, Jennifer, for joining me today. I very much appreciate letting our listeners get a little glimpse into your career path, because it has been remarkable. And I know as we continue to watch you, I expect you're just going to continue to shoot for the stars. So would you share with our listeners how they can follow the foundations? I know the CHI Memorial or some of the other initiatives that you're leading.
Absolutely. So we have a capital campaign going right now called Invest in the Best. So supportchimemorial.org is our website. We have a Facebook page, chimemorial.org. Our Instagram page is CHI Memorial. So lots of ways to follow us through all of those various sites. And if anybody listening would like to come and take a tour at the hospital or hear more about how they personally can get involved in some way, whether that be being a volunteer at the hospital or being a donor that makes a deeper personal impact, I would love to talk with them. So please get in touch.
All right. I will link all of that in the show notes, so
Thank you.
People can easily find it, and I'll put it on the Facebook page for the Empowered Career Woman.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been delightful.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Great to see you.
Great to see you. Well, for our listeners, please join me on the next episode of the Empowered Career Woman podcast. I also ask, would you leave us a rating and a review? And I would welcome your comments and even your questions or suggestions for next guests at theempoweredcareerwoman@gmail.com, and visit our Facebook page. It's emp.career.woman. The Empowered Career Woman is proudly presented by Medicare Misty. Medicare Misty is a real person who can help answer your Medicare questions. Get real help from her team at MedicareMisty.com. The rise to the top is not always a straight line. Sometimes the bend in the road is the most challenging, yet it leads us to where we are meant to be. If you are an aspiring business leader or entrepreneur, join us next time as we share stories of women who made it to the top. I'm Lisa, and see you next time.